The restaurant industry is always considered to be a very sexy industry. So we have to, there's a lot of people that just want to own a restaurant because they think it's cool. So, there's competition coming from, the well-known established operators, but also those that don't know. And those that don't know are dangerous because they're willing to pay for rent dollars, or, they're willing to pay rents that the good operator is not willing to pay. But now, since we're not willing to pay because we understand the local market and understand the business, we're losing deals to these people.
Welcome to the Restaurant Leaders Unplugged podcast, where real talks with restaurant leaders take center stage. Discover the challenges and victories that define success in the culinary world. Dive into essential strategies from marketing to operations and gain insights that will transform your approach to your restaurant business. Don't just keep up, lead the way. Join me, your host, Sebastian Stahl, on this journey to excellence.
Andrei, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Restaurant Leaders Unplugged podcast. Again, it's really a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's get started. Andrei, so we'll just, having a conversation here. I know you've been in the restaurant industry for quite some time. Can you walk us through a little bit of how you got started and, what was that defining moment that you made the decision to actually get into this industry? Because as you know, it's not an easy industry. So that decision, sometimes we don't know how we end up here. So what's your story?
So it wasn't by choice. I sort of just landed on the industry. I was quite young. My brother had just started the Suviche restaurant back in 2010. And I was just excited to work. And it seemed like a good opportunity for me to get into and start making a little bit of money on the side while I was actually in college. So I started serving. With my brother at the first Suviche restaurant back in 2010, very small restaurant, 500 square feet. And then from there, one thing led to the other. And before I knew it, it was sort of my career. And it has been for the last 15 years or so. So, it was one of those things that it wasn't necessarily planned, but once I got into it and, started to learn more about the industry, the people, I sort of just fell in love and I'm still here.
Right. And looking back, when you first embarked on this journey, did you truly understand the magnitude of what you were really getting into?
No, absolutely not. I think if I knew, I might have taken a different route here. It's just a very dynamic and complex industry. You're not only serving food, but everything that goes behind that, the people, the amount of effort it takes, for you to sell a single plate of food. There's so many different, not only within the four walls, but relationships you have to build with vendors, relationships you have to build with your customers, with your team. There's just so many different facets of the restaurant industry that, it's partly why I think many people are in love with the industry and like the industry, but there's just so many different things that you need to be well versed in that it's definitely not easy. So, at times I wish I could have taken an easier path.
For sure. I mean, there are just so many moving parts. And so reflecting back on your early days, at Suviche in 2010, I mean, what were the initial dreams or, ideals that you guys had? And how do you see that comparing to where you guys are today and the unexpected turns that, the company has taken?
Well, I think since the beginning, the idea was always to be able to replicate what we were trying to do. So, everything that we built, Suviche, and we always had the idea of whatever we do and whatever the mindset is, needs to be, how can we replicate the concept and have more than one store? So from the beginning, we always wanted to just be more than one store. And looking back, we went through different paths. I think, originally it's sort of like the opportunities that present themselves. At first, Suviche started as a very small restaurant, beer and wine. We evolved to a slightly larger store for Suviche Salvage and that we opened in 2012, which we thought it was going to be our prototype going forward. It was a 1,500 square foot store with about 50 seats. very family oriented, full service, but quite small. And then from there, an opportunity presented itself where all of a sudden we had a Suviche in Wynwood that we opened in 2013 with a full bar. And originally the concept wasn't meant to be that, but with time it evolved into that, and we saw too that it was a very interesting business model, adding the bar component. So then that evolved, and we said, okay, now this is the prototype, and we opened in Fort Lauderdale, and then we had what we thought was a good concept, and then in 2017 another opportunity presented itself for us to take over the Novecento brand. So then that sort of sidelined the Suviche brand to a certain extent, because now we sort of doubled the company. I remember that year.
Right. Novecento is also a full service restaurant with bar and everything, right?
Yeah. Actually, much bigger spaces. The smallest restaurant at the time was 5,000 square feet. So 200 plus seats, full service, bar, the whole deal. So, looking back, I think, we took opportunities. We made good decisions with the information we had. And, I think we're happy to be where we are today. But yeah, the idea from day one was also always to create a hospitality group besides just, opening a couple of stores.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, every business comes with its challenges. And I know that this has been, of course, for any group or for any restaurant, it's a challenge. Can you share a moment through all these years that you guys have been growing that's really tested your resolve, like something that's been really challenging? Of course, COVID, I know it's something that's tested all of our resolves in many ways. But is there something specific that you guys went through or that you went through personally that really tested you to the limit?
I think the Novecento acquisition was particularly difficult. I think we underestimated the amount of work it was going to take to integrate and to really go from, at the time we had 4 stores, 150, 160 employees, to all of a sudden from one day to the next, having 7 stores with 300 plus team members. And that jump, I think we really underestimated the amount of effort it was going to take. It wasn't only launching a new brand where you have the time, and you kind of can manage the timelines. This was really, okay, you have a new brand, we hit the ground running. And there's a learning curve to that. There's a learning curve to the brand, to the culture, to how things are. There's an integration perspective of the cultures between the brands. So it definitely tested our resolve and, our working hours. And I don't think I've ever worked as much as we all did during that time period. And at the same time, we were growing the sports and entertainment division. I remember 2018, it was our first year in Miami Open. So just so many things going on that we, definitely made us question whether it was the right move in hindsight. But yeah, for sure. Obviously a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we all go through all these periods, right? And then that's the only way to grow. We just go through this process. And so now, especially, with industry changing so much and these things happening, as labor costs, food costs, like inflation, all of these things, it's constantly in flux. So what are the biggest challenges that you see today for Suviche Hospitality? And, what are you guys doing to adapt?
So, I mean, it's funny. I just I was in a summit earlier this week, and the topic of the panel that I participated in was what keeps up a CFO at night.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the obvious, what everybody's struggling in the industry, which is labor, rising costs, specifically labor. There's some legislative changes that have happened in Florida where we're having to deal with a increase in minimum wage, where we've seen 170% increase for front of house labor over the last 3 years. Oof. And we've seen 50% increase in heart of the house labor since the pandemic, and very little time to plan. And so it's been difficult to manage. We've recently transitioned to commission model where we're now including a service charge in our checks, and our service team is considered a commission-based employee. So it's allowed us to mitigate some of those rising costs in the front of the house. But from a labor perspective, we've also increased some of our pricing, where we've seen that after the pandemic, we saw some flexibility in the demand curve, but I think that's going to change this year. More and more we're seeing consumer sentiment down. We're seeing, people are becoming more conscious about their spending. Disposable income is not as high as it used to be. Savings accounts are the lowest they've been. So there's some indicators there that, sort of worry us in the short to long term, or short to medium term. And so we're being very conscious about how we're spending our money, how we're planning our growth. I think that we need to be careful about, or at least this is, how we feel strategically speaking, but, we need to take very strong steps in the next 6 to 12 months. There will be good opportunities, which is something also that I think we want to take advantage of. But at the same time, we need to be very strategic as to where we put our resources, both time and money.
Definitely. Where do you see those opportunities?
So I think, speaking about Miami specifically, there was a big influx of big operators after the pandemic, both domestic and international, but also some independent operators. The restaurant industry is always considered to be a very sexy industry. So we have to, there's a lot of people that just want to own a restaurant because they think it's cool. So, there's competition coming from, the well-known established operators, but also those that don't know. And those that don't know are dangerous because they're willing to pay for rent dollars, or, they're willing to pay rents that the good operator is not willing to pay. But now since we're not willing to pay because we understand the local market and understand the business, we're losing deals to these people. So essentially, this is driving the price up of real estate, which ends up impacting us. So it makes it for a very competitive and interesting market.
Sure. It's a complex market for sure.
Correct. So I think that's where, with that effect, that post-COVID effect of so much just money being in the streets, that's dwindling down. So we do see that there will be some opportunities in that arena of people that overpaid or, under budgeted, their sales, or they thought just, Miami, it's hot, there's volume, there's people, but, it's not necessarily true. A lot of the apartments we see here, yes, they sell, like, new construction, sells and there's a demand for it, but we have to remind ourselves that 50% or more of those people don't actually live here. So when you look at a building in Miami, yes, it might be sold out, but when you look at it at night, there's only 50% of the lights turned on. And we know that as local operators, but people that come here and ask a broker and they hear, everything is sold out. Well, obviously they want to open a restaurant because they think the building's full, when in essence it's not. So
right. And then it's also, I guess it's something that people misperceive because it's a flashy or popular city and people are there, but it's not always the locals that are there. And so, the spending power of the locals are very different than the spending power of the people that are just coming in to visit. Correct. So for the long run, and it's a different ballgame. Yeah. So, operationally, where do you see the opportunities? I know that, we've had discussions in the past of, streamlining operations, simpler menus, right? And less footprint. What are your thoughts around that?
So we've always been fans of small footprints, and that's one of the reasons why we have a commissary kitchen. There's the obvious benefits of streamlining production of, it's essentially a value add facility where we're portioning proteins and things like that. But it also allows us to have smaller kitchens at the restaurant. So I think the tendency for us, as much as we can for future locations, is to reduce footprint in order to reduce our occupancy. But also, I think a tendency in the market is for restaurants to stop doing everything and focus on something they are really good at, right? Like, I think gone are the days of the cheesecake factories where, you have a 30-page menu that you can have pasta to sushi to whatever. I think something different for every member of the family. So
Yeah.
so I think this year specifically, we're focusing on Suviche this next 3 months, where we're really looking at every single item, every single recipe, every single procedure, and we're seeing how is it affecting our labor. What is actually driving labor hours? What is actually driving sales? And then focusing on that, and everything else that's just noise, getting rid of it or taking it away, or there might be opportunities to make certain recipes better. But our goal is to be able to reduce our menu and really focus on what's driving sales and also what's driving efficiency. And obviously, it's a long project. It's going to take us about 3 months, but we're really going to sort of don't leave any stone unturned. We're going to be looking at every single thing and with a very open mindset, because, as we all are humans, we get stuck in our ways. So I think we're approaching this with a very open mind, with the objective of really, again, focusing on what's driving our sales.
Right.
And what's driving efficiency from a labor productivity standpoint.
Right. That's great. I think it's a very smart move. And, that's operationally, of course, that you guys are doing that. So now we're switching gears, here talking about the marketing side of the business, because as you know, I mean, it's often the lifeblood of restaurant success in many ways, but, sometimes, it fails. Some restaurateurs, as you know, like they do fail to see the value in that. Right. Because and really see, and not just the short-term stuff, right? The tactics and things that bring revenue, but more about the building the long-term value of the brand itself. So what strategies have you found that have been most impactful? And is there a specific, example that you can share of what you've seen to work from that standpoint?
Marketing is very difficult in the restaurant industry. It's very difficult at times to track conversion. So, I think it really boils down to telling our story and how we're communicating our brands. And to be completely transparent, I think, we're continuing to learn how to do that, especially now with a very saturated, social media like Instagram, where it's so difficult to stand out. There's so much money being invested and resources being
so
invested,
much noise,
and so much noise, that we're trying to take a step back and really understand how can we better tell our story to better engage with our guests and our community. Because I feel like at the end of the day, that's how you build engagement and you build, a real community around your brands. So I think that's what we're working on. And I think we're sort of right now strategically thinking about how to accomplish that. Even though we've been, in the market for 15 years, I think the average people spend 2, 3, 4 years and then they move. So we're probably like in our second or third generation of Miamians. Yeah. And I think, maybe we haven't really reached that third generation, if that makes sense. So
it does.
So yeah. It's like
we've
an
seen
evolving,
that.
Very dynamic beast.
Totally, especially, a market like Miami. It's just we've seen that too with other restaurants, that the market has completely changed. There's new people there in the city, and so you have to re-educate, basically get people to fall in love with your concept again and with your brand, and develop those relationships. At the end of the day, everything that you do in marketing, social media, whatever it is, it's about building relationships. It's establishing that connection, right? And it's just a tool, right? So how do you do that consistently, especially with new people coming into the city? Right, reintroduce yourself to them, in different ways.
You're starting from scratch every couple of years.
yeah, true.
It's a small anecdote, but we have a very strong partnership with Omakai.
Just for the people that don't know what Omakai is, can you just tell me?
So Omakai is we started. It's a couple of friends of ours, and we've essentially helped them scale as fast as possible the brand. And they started in 2019. It's a traditional Japanese restaurant, omakase restaurant, but very focusing on high quality and affordable price. So we've scaled that to 2 full service restaurants. And then we just opened the first Omakai hand roll bar in Brickell 2-3 weeks ago. 28 seats, hand roll bar, very, very cool experience. And the first day opening, We don't take reservations, but we were taking information for walk-in purposes.
Yep.
And about, I think it was 70% of numbers were New York numbers.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea and perspective on how much Miami has changed.
Wow.
So
That's
when we're
incredible.
talking about transient people and new people that live in Miami, and how do we essentially start from scratch? And even if we're a 15-year-old brand in Miami, we might not be known that well known because it's gotten diluted over time. People moving out of the city.
Yes.
But we were very surprised to see that such a high percentage of people didn't have their phone number, wasn't local, was from New York.
Right. That's crazy, man. But yeah, we've definitely seen that. And so then the investment in getting the word out there and brand awareness, you need to consider that at some point, right? To see that where does it need to be? Because it can't be to sustain, it's to build.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. That's crazy, man. All right. So now moving on to a different subject here. We're talking about, and I know you guys are strong in this, and I'd love to hear your take on it's company culture. So building a positive company culture, it's always easier said than done. And so what values do you guys really hold most dear to Suviche, at Suviche? And how do you guys ensure that this is actually translates and trickles down from, the top to everybody in the company? Because I know that's a challenge.
Yeah. One of the hardest challenges, I think, in our industry.
Yeah.
I mean, I think since the beginning, I think any restaurateur that's involved in the industry, to a certain degree, really enjoys or really gets a kick out of being around people, helping people, seeing people progress. I think that's natural and inherent to the industry. But at the same time, it's so difficult as you scale to maintain that, and I think it's been one of the bigger challenges with scale. It's come that dilution of culture, but year after year, we continue to invest because we do think that, for us, it's very, very important. And how do we do that? I mean, it's one of those things that you need to have a lot of clarity around what you stand for, what your guiding principles are, what's very important for you. And you need to be able to transmit that across the different levels of the company. So that communication and that vision needs to be present in all the different touch points. When you're hiring someone, when you're training someone, when you're asking them how they're doing, through surveys, through surveys that measure engagement, and always trying to iterate on how we can better transmit our values.
Right.
Because as you scale, what my brother or I, how we feel, you need to make sure that, or the questions we ask, or how we communicate what's important and our values, you need to make sure that the person that reports to you does the same to his direct reports, and his or her direct reports do the same. So when you're 2, 3, 4 steps removed from your frontline team members, if you will, from the people that are actually having engagement and contact with your guests, it's like the broken telephone game. Once it gets to the 5th, 6th, 7th person, like the whole sentence changed. Right. So, what do you put in place so that it doesn't get broken in that chain? So, I mean, I'll let you know when we find the right answer. But, for us, it's just trying to make it as present as possible in all of the different points: hiring, training, engagement, and trying to meet as much as possible with our management team, having constant meetings with them, and also driving when we're talking about what's important for us this year, what are our sort of North Stars for this year? We always, at the top is always well-being. What KPIs do we have to measure that we're pushing that well-being forward, right? Not only focusing on the financial performance, but also focusing on KPIs that drive that well-being forward.
Especially in this industry, right? Which it's so known for its high stress levels and, all of these things that happen, right? So that you guys doing this I think it's fantastic. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, people go to work, spend more time at work than at home. So you want to have happy people, have a workplace where people want to go, right? And I know you guys have, you guys have been big about building those relationships with the team, even at the front line. But it's just like, as you just said, once you scale, how do you keep those relationships? You can't even remember the names of some person because it's 800 people or whatever, how many people in the company. So it's just very difficult to do that. But I guess it goes back to hiring, right? The right people at the top. So then that can hopefully trickle down to that. Yeah.
And as much as possible, measuring, just like, you how you measure your profit and loss. I mean, or your EBITDA, your turnover, your, retention, there needs to be some metrics in your KPIs that track the well-being of your team, because there's always ways to improve how the message is being transmitted and where the message lives. But it's it's a work in progress. It's trying to improve year after year.
So I know you guys, of course, focus again, talking about culture and values, right? Just being clear in what they are, the guiding principles that you just talked about. How do you implement these values or in your daily decisions at the top? How do you guys make them real in your everyday decisions?
So they're the framework of our decision making. We need to make sure that whatever decision we make, and this trickles down, from strategic decisions to day-to-day decisions that our management team makes, they need to fit within the benchmark of our guiding principles. So that's what we try to teach our managers, that, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, or whether it produced the result that you wanted or didn't. As long as the framework that led you to that decision, you considered our guiding principles and what's important for us, then it was the right decision. And then we will learn if the outcome wasn't as expected or was negative, then, then we can learn from that decision and see, maybe it's a hard skill that you didn't have that you need to learn, or, we can see what went wrong. But for us, the most important thing, I think, is the framework of how decisions are made.
And so, of course, those decisions at the end of the day, when they're implemented, they're going to trickle down, right? All the way to the guest experience, right? All the way to the guests. So, and as we know, customer experience in this industry is king. So how do you guys go about, as you have scaled, to keep a pulse on what guests want? And, what are you guys doing on a daily basis to meet their expectations or to exceed those expectations when they come in?
So one of the biggest metrics we use to track engagement at the restaurant, and also whether we're doing a good job, frankly, whether guests are happy, is NPS, Net Promoter Score, which essentially, it's a harder way to look at reviews, where there's any review between 1 and 3 is a detractor, a 4-star is neutral, and any 5-star review is a positive. So then, we essentially anything below 3 is -1, a 4 is 0, and a 5 is 1. So when you add up all your internal, external reviews, you come up with a percentage, and then that percentage will be our NPS score. And we strive to be above 75%. And so that allows us to have a better pulse of how we're doing, as opposed to, we have a 4.9 in Google reviews, but that doesn't really tell you much, right? But if we actually, when we track our NPS score week to week, we're not only tracking the score, but we're also tracking the number of reviews. And number of reviews usually translates to engagement. Is our team engaged with the guest? Were we engaged enough to motivate someone to leave, take time out of their day to leave a review? Then we're doing a good job. So we track that very closely week to week, both the score and the number, to see what our engagement is like. So it's top of mind for our management team and our team members. And we've seen that high NPS scores usually means a growth in year-over-year sales.
Our sales. That's fantastic, man. Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. So now, switching gears here to talk a little bit about technology and, and sustainability. I know you guys are big in tech in different ways. You've been implementers, you've been early adopters of many technologies. I think Toast was one of them, and Marquee was a different one. I mean, different platforms that you guys have implemented. Restaurant 365. That's right. When they were getting started, they had a tiny booth.
I had 5 people in the company when we onboarded. Back there, like 10, 11
I remember. Yeah. Yeah. So now, tech is rapidly evolving. I mean, it's definitely come a long way since the beginning. I mean, since we started, we know each other. But how have you guys integrated all of these or some of these platforms into Suviche's operations? Of course, Restaurant 365 is one of them, but really to enhance both customer experience and the efficiency in your operation.
Well, I think obviously it's always, the obvious answer is we're always looking at tech to make our lives easier. But we've seen that the last 5 or 6 years, there's so much tech out there that it's almost overwhelming, to the point where there's so many potential, I don't want to call them issues, but maybe opportunities that you want to solve with tech,
Right.
that now you almost have to think twice. Because if you were to implement tech across all your opportunities or pain points, you would have 30 different applications, and your IT budget all of a sudden, is too material or too expensive. And we've to a certain extent seen that, where we're looking at, stores are paying $2,000+ a month on tech, and
chasing shiny objects.
Yeah, exactly. And you're creating information, different silos where now your guest data is in 2 or 3 different platforms. And so for us, it's been more of like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's see, how does our tech stack look? There's sacrifices that need to be made. And really, we need to focus on what's important for us and then go after that. Because if we just start to add this tech and that looks cool. Oh, this is awesome. All of a sudden, not only is your budget completely out of whack, but you start building systems that they don't communicate to each other. And then it's painful both for us, but also for the people using them, because they're overwhelmed. And like, wait, my reviews are here, and then I have to go here for loyalty, and then my gift cards, but wait, it doesn't integrate. So you guys just need to be very careful about that, because it makes training new managers difficult as well. And now we have AI, where it's, I think there'll be a lot of good applications for the restaurant industry that will increase productivity.
Yeah.
But, we got to be careful. We got to be careful about, how we use it and where we use it, because it's a bit early still, but
it is.
But yeah, I think technology will help. And, we still think that it does, but we're at a point too where we need to just be very particular as to what technology we're adding to the tech stack, to make sure that we're building a holistic tech stack. That's our biggest goal right now.
Makes sense.
Even if we have to sacrifice some capabilities, we want to make sure that we have a holistic tech stack that's communicating with each other and is making our life easier. And also, softwares, especially on the marketing front, there's so many cool stuff out there. But, if you don't have the resources to use it, you might as well not have it. If you're going to have this awesome software that tells you, especially for like new locations, and you can see your frequency of visits for your current stores, and where do those guests come from, and where do they go after they come to your restaurant, and what if I were to open here, what would that look like? There's super cool stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, are we going to use it? And how are we going to use it? When are we going to use it? And why are we going to use it? So it's just,
Yeah, no, it's learning when to say no to those shiny objects, because there's just so much. I agreed. Exactly, and definitely the marketing standpoint, we deal with that all the time. So you got to be mindful that it makes sense, especially in the restaurant industry. Finally, there's more systems that are communicating these days. So now it's just a little bit easier, but still, there's still a gap, I see. But now, talking about sustainability, now it's really not just a trend, it's really a necessity, for a lot of concepts. How are you guys implementing some of these practices? And, what impact do you hope to have in the industry? Loaded question.
Not easy question. I think
it's,
there's a lot of different partners in the sustainability effort. I think it's not always easy or clear. So for example, I've spoken with a lot, we try to be as sustainable, obviously, with our packaging, especially. We spend the money to make sure that we're using as much recycled material as we can, and materials that are compostable, or or that can, in the right plant be recycled.
Right.
But what we've learned a lot from our partners is that most of this all ends up in the same landfill. So I think we just need to do better, honestly. As us as restaurants, but also, partnering with the right partners, because what we're missing too is, yes, for instance, we can start separating our trash, recyclable or not, but who's going to pick that up? Because waste management picks up recycled trash. I mean, if they see a little cap on top of your milk carton, they're not going to recycle that. So it's extremely difficult to do it in a way that has a
real
has
impact.
the impact that you would want. But I think we need to do our part. So with that being said, we try to be use sustainable materials for all our packaging, and because it does make a difference. And I think too now this year, along with the menu party, is what we're calling this big project that's attacking productivity, and we're looking heavily at waste. We're taking a sort of, there's byproducts in some of the recipes that we do, and we try to use it, but at times, we don't end up using all of it. So what can we do with that, whether it's internal or external? So we're going to also be taking a look at our waste and seeing, for example, we use a lot of tomato. We don't use the core for what we do. So we fill up a whole trash can of tomato core. So we need to be thinking of ways that we can use that, whether internally or externally. We need to start looking at ways that we can make that useful for other people, because it's good. It's good. Same thing with our cucumbers. We don't use the core also. So things like that. We're gonna make an effort now and try to find the right partners that can help us be more sustainable in that way as well.
Right. That's great that you guys are thinking that way. Not everybody does, but that's great. So in terms of, competition, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, about Miami being a super competitive, market. I mean, that's, I think there's many different markets that are very competitive. So what are you guys doing to stay ahead, to stay relevant? I mean, we talked briefly about it, but any strategies that you guys are putting into place to stay ahead with that?
I mean, I think there's different, avenues of how to stay competitive. Our brands are mostly catered to locals, and so we want to make sure we're providing value. So I think, how our menu is priced and the value we're delivering to our guests is very important. We don't want to solve issues or rising, labor, food, everything has inflation. It's not just labor and food, right? We're looking at utilities. We're looking at every single line item in your P&L has been affected by inflation. And the answer can't be all the time, I'm just going to raise my price, because, we need to be able to stay competitive in other ways. So, for us, we don't want to be taking that shortcut of, okay, let's shrinkflation. Let's just serve less, or let's just raise the price. So we need to be thinking of more creative ways to continue to deliver that value to guests, and I think that's how we remain competitive. And I think guests do appreciate that. And then this is how you tie marketing. I mean, if you don't tell that story to your guests, then you might as well not do it. Because then nobody knows about it. So we need to find ways to be able to tell that story to our guests, to our community, so that people are aware. But, we want and we will continue to use, high-end products and all-natural chicken, and very good quality beef from special packing plants that we choose in the U.S. that we know, our produce partner, and our strong relationship with our fish producer that we buy a lot of our mahi from. So, it's strengthening these relationships and making sure that we're telling the story, so that we continue to deliver value to our guests.
Right.
I think that's the most important way of how we remain competitive, and by genuinely being able to provide value and to communicate that with our guests and our team, our team as well.
Yeah, and I see you guys also are innovating, right, in different ways, not just, that way for sure. I think that's fantastic you guys are doing that, but also, I see that you guys are always, innovating in different places, right, in whatever it is. It's your concepts, the food, the menu. I see you guys just open a new speakeasy in the Maripico Village area in Miami. Can you tell me a little bit about that concept and what's the vision behind it?
So how it started, frankly, was the restaurant was too big and we needed to do something about it.
You mean the space of the new location for one of the Novechentos?
So we moved our Novecento Brickell, which was historically famous on Brickell Avenue. We moved it to Maripico Village, and the space that we landed on was a 6,500 square feet space, and obviously. We just talked about the million reasons why we shouldn't go into a space that big. So we said, okay, like, what do we do? Because, we don't want the restaurant that big. So we said, okay, let's open a bar. So that's how it started. Our vision was not to, hey, we want to open a bar. It was like kind of like, hey, we have too much space. We need to do something with it. Why don't we do a bar?
Right.
So, so we got, anyways, sort of, now we have a speakeasy.
Right. What's it called? What's the concept about?
It's called Panamericano, and the concept really focuses on bringing all the beautiful and cool spirits and culture of the Americas continent. So we focus on spirits that are 100% sourced from the American continent. That's Canada, the US, Mexico, South America, Central America. So 100% of our spirits come from this continent, and we try to sell and tell the story of that continent, and how cool and about how abundant it is, and how diverse it is, and how it has so much to offer. And we do that through mixology. We do that through very, very cool and high-end mixology that our guests are able to experience in a very neat 30-seat bar. And the bar is very cool. We actually imported it from Europe because it's a custom design where the bar is lower than your usual bar, so you're able to see all of the action and how the bartenders are preparing your drinks and the different ices and the different garnishes that they're all homemade. So, anyways, the need of activating a space led us down through this crazy idea, and that this is what was born out of it.
Well, that's cool, man. That's cool. I know I got to go back again and experience a ceremony. Those things that you guys are doing there with the whole experience with the mixology.
Yeah, we tied in ceremonies, Latin American ceremonies to cocktails. So we have like a water divination ritual, and we have a cacao ceremony. So they're all based on actual ceremonies that take place, whether, it's an indigenous ceremony, and we get inspired from that to create a drink that's a little bit more experiential, not just So there's a little bit more involved. You'll have to come check us out.
Right, definitely.
Find out more.
It's fantastic. For sure. We'll get some people over there, man. All right. So what about, we're going to shift gears here, also go into more about, we're going to get into a little bit of the personal reflections and your experience and everything that you've learned. So as a successful CFO, what are your, personal habits or practices that have, been really helpful in your journey? Are there any books, mentors, or moments of clarity that you've, that have come to you through all of this experience that you've been in your time as a CFO at Suviche?
I think as business owners, we have to deal with a lot from a lot of different places, and so one of the biggest things that, I try to preach and to practice is ruthless time management. You have to be very careful about how you're spending your time, because if not, the time just goes by, and the week just goes by, and the month just goes by, and then you look back and you see, what did I accomplish? Did I move? Did I spend time in the things that move the needle? And for you to have that clarity, you first need to know what you're trying to move. So what is the objective for the month, for the period, for the year, for the quarter, however you want to break it down? And then what do I have to do to move it forward? And make sure that you're consistently checking upon yourself to see that you're spending time to get to those objectives. and you're spending time to move those objectives, because it's very easy to fill up your calendar with meetings or with this and that. But you have to ask yourself, what I did this week helped me get closer to that objective. And I've come to realize that you need ruthless time management to do that. And at times, it's like, did I really need to have that meeting? Maybe not.
Right.
So yeah,
Or
you have to learn how to say no.
100%. And it's not only a meetings, a text and
Text,
a message,
distraction,
a call.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
There's so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So, the restaurant industry, we both know it's full of high and lows. And what is the one thing that you really love about this business? And what is one thing that still frustrates the hell out of you?
There's so many answers to this question. I think what I love the most and what brings me the most energy and and sort of like it helps to motivate me is when I go spend time at the restaurant. And you're there, you connect with the team, you have a little bit of fun, you talk with people, you see the business, right? You're in the business. I always feel invigorated when I do that.
Yeah.
What frustrates me? Oof. Many things, probably.
Yeah.
I think at times it's very frustrating when you think something is easy to do, and you might think it might be a small change. For example, let's assume we changed how we present the plate. We changed the plating. You would be surprised how difficult it is.
Right.
Or we got rid of a garnish. We no longer garnish this plate with cilantro stems.
Right.
And then it's like 3 weeks later, you find it's like, wait, why are we still putting cilantro stems on the dish? And then you think back, and it's just things that you would think are like, you just go in, you delete it in the recipe, you send it to the team, and that's it. And it's like, no, it's not that easy. So it's frustrating to think that, at times even the smallest changes have a lot of friction, and it's not easy to change, so
right.
At times change is slow and it's a bit frustrating.
And it's all built on habits, and especially when you're scaling, you get a bunch of units, and how the hell do you keep that consistency that everybody gets the message, that everybody remembers, and then they change the habit of doing one small thing, like putting a cilantro stem on a plate as a garnish. That's crazy. Yeah, for sure, man. So for those who are aspiring to breaking this wonderful business, which we all love and hate sometimes, I mean, it's more love than hate, but yeah, it happens. And they're trying to grow their brands. They're starting out, they might have maybe one restaurant. And what advice would you give to them? And is there any, and what is one lesson that you learned that you wish somebody would have told you earlier?
I think don't bite more than you can chew. At times, you want to get in the business, and you see other people are successful, and you see how, certain groups open a lot of restaurants. And I think the most important advice I could give is, have patience, take your time, make sure your foundations are strong, make sure, you have the mindset of, yes, I want to grow, but you need to have strong foundations, because the small problems you face today, they're just going to get multiplied by 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 locations. So, have patience. I think that it will pay dividends. It will pay dividends to have strong foundations today, so that when you grow, things will be much easier, and we've seen this in our experience where at times, you're sort of chasing the carrot, and I opened 2 and now I want 4, and now you have 4 and now I want 8. And that's great. Ambition is great, but have patience and don't bite more than you can chew, because once you're there, it's too late to make the corrections. It's double or triple the amount of effort than it would have taken you originally.
No, for sure.
So you have to be very strategic in that sense, and make sure that you are very strong. Because if not, what would have taken you 2 hours to do, it'll now take you 10 to correct.
Makes a ton of sense, man. And I think it's in every business, right? Like we can get busy with operations, especially when you're small, right? You think, okay, I'm busy. No, I'm just busy with sales. I'm busy with operating, all that stuff. Let's say you start to grow and you have no structure, no systems in place, like none of that, because you're just so busy with doing all the rest of the stuff. And now when it comes time that you are able to grow, you're scaling, you're getting another unit or whatever it is, you don't have those systems in place. You're screwed because like all those things in place are not going to work properly. And then you're getting bad reviews, you're losing clients, all of these things are starting happening, Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That's been also my experience in both businesses.
Yeah. And then it's very hard to fix.
Yeah. And
it's a lot more effort, a lot more everything.
Right. And it takes that focus that you're talking about, that, ruthless time management, because it's like, okay, listen, I need to do this. Even if I'm small right now, if the revenue is not high, right? Even if I'm still struggling, I'm going to build the systems, having the, trusting that eventually, they'll pay off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So looking ahead, what's in the horizon for Suviche Hospitality Group? Were any plans for development and growth?
So yes, of course. We want to continue to grow the group. We're looking for the opportunities we talked about earlier, where we think that in this market, there's going to be opportunities of, restaurant closings. The saying, when people are greedy, be careful. When people are careful, be greedy. So I think now people are being careful, and now it's a time to take some calculated risks. So we're going to be on the lookout to open a couple of restaurants in the next 12 to 18 months with that mindset.
Right. That's great. Great answer. And so this is the final question, and in your journey, both in life and restaurant industry, what is one truth that you've come to realize that, others might find uncomfortable or even controversial? Like something that you believe that is crucial for success, but people just rarely talk about it. It could be something that's probably not sexy at all. What do you think it is for you?
Something that is crucial for success, right, but is unsexy.
And it's uncomfortable. People don't even want to talk about it.
I think that's a good question.
I think you brushed on it a little bit ago with one of your answers.
Yeah. Crucial for success. I mean, I think at times it's sacrificing the ambition. Maybe not the ambition. Sacrificing the immediate satisfaction. Right? Because at times we're looking for that immediate satisfaction of a personal satisfaction or professional satisfaction, or human satisfaction, even to a certain degree, where we're very easily unmotivated once we accomplish our goal, and we always want to go to the next goal, and then the next goal, and then chasing the never-ending carrot. So I think we need to break that habit, and celebrate the wins when you have the wins, and not just solely rely on that expectation of, oh, I opened my second store, now I need to look for my third. And because it's what people expect, or it's what will continue to motivate me, or is the fixed expectation from those around me. So I think at times the smart move is not always to take that step. A lot of things need to align. And I think the motivation needs to be right. It can't be just because, I want more money, or just because I want more recognition in the community. I think the motivation needs to come from a good place and from a place of clarity, so that, you make the right decisions. So I don't know if that answered the question.
It did, man. It did. That's a lot of wisdom behind those words. And I was alluding before to when you were talking about patience as well.
Yeah.
Because it ties into that, and I get tied up to that. I've gotten into that frame of mind of the next thing. And, and it's more about enjoying the journey, right? Which is hard to do sometimes when you're struggling with certain things that happen, right? In business. Yeah. But it is about the journey, because then when you get to the final end goal, you're like, now what? Now what? Right now what?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things in my life that I've changed. Whereas maybe before it was work, 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 work. Like this is, prime age to work, work, work. And then like for me now, there's other things that are more important.
Right.
I enjoy my family. I enjoy my son that's 15
I was
months
going to
old
say
now.
that.
And, I want to be home by 6. Like, work can wait until tomorrow. Like I want to make sure I have breakfast with him. That's my celebration. Like I'm thankful that I can have breakfast with him. And I'm thankful that I can show up to hang out with him in the afternoon and make sure I'm the one that showers him and puts him to bed, So I enjoy that. And for me, that's more important than maybe opening another store, if that's what it takes, So.
Definitely. I mean, it's work. It's a whirlwind of stuff that it's a never ending thing. It just sucks you up and there's always going to be more and more and more and more. You know what I mean? So,
and it makes you more intentional. It makes you more intentional when you have these priorities. Let's just say I want to, have breakfast and dinner with my family. Like it makes you very intentional during the day to make sure you're not wasting time in things that, you shouldn't be wasting in. And so it's made me more intentional about decisions, about time management, and, saying no. So it doesn't have to come at the sacrifice of, I'm not saying working less necessarily means your output or your productivity decreasing. I think it just makes you more intentional. So that during that, what used to take you 10 hours, now you can do in 6.5.
Agreed, man. I think that once you have a family, if you have kids and it just, there's something that switches in your mind, you know what I mean? And it's priorities. For me, it's the same. I have a certain number of hours that I can't do more because sometimes my brain wants to take me there. I just want to go on and continue. But at the end, you're like, what's really the most important thing here? Do I want to spend time with my daughter, my wife, right? That stuff. And see her smiling face, or I want to continue grinding here in the computer. What's it going to get me?
Exactly.
So you can always wait for tomorrow, man. Most of the time,
Yeah, you need to have clear goals, professional and personal. At the end of the day, when that'll provide clarity. That's what provides at least me clarity in my day to day.
Right.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah, man. Andrei, well, thank you so much for the time, man. It was great speaking to you and having this conversation. Definitely look forward to visiting your new place and other restaurants in Miami. And thanks so much, man.
Thank you for having me. It was great to connect.
Thank you.